But first, I want to welcome everyone to this evening's Let's Talk About It discussion, where we're talking about um, digital asset reform. And we'll start by going over the disclaimer, which everyone can see on the screen. Um, First and foremost, information is strictly for educational purposes. Um, Before you make any important financial decisions, we strongly recommend that you consult licensed financial advisors, attorneys, or tax professionals. And though the individuals speaking this evening have decades of experience in the topics that we're discussing, these individuals may not be licensed or registered with any regulatory authority. And the main thing is to do your due diligence. So with that, we're going to jump in. We have a panel that I'm going to briefly allow each person about a minute to introduce themselves and to introduce the projects that they're working on. And then I'm going to start a presentation about the digital asset report that came out this Wednesday. And then during the presentation, we're going to have some discussions in four main areas about the report. So first up, I would like to introduce Aquarius Maximus. And if you could give us about a minute introduction and what you're working on.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aquarius Maximus, formerly known as Tavana Evans. I'm the founder of Blockcoin. It's a cryptocurrency, a blockchain we launched back in 2017 that I've been working on since 2016. I have a bunch of other things I'm working on right now. Currently, the main thing is we're about to launch a Web3 enabled browser called EB, which stands for Everything Black. And that has Blockcoin baked into it, AI baked into it, and immersive reality VR is what we're also working on. And so I have a couple of AI blockchain projects as well, where we're working towards tokenizing identity, assets, etc. One of them is in the music space, where we're working on tokenizing voice models, so that people can get their proper royalty for using their voice in music or podcasting, etc. We're also working on some other communication protocols, because very soon these telephone number things are going to go away, because people having access to you is going to be very overwhelming in the age of AI. So we will be issuing tokenized access to ourselves as well. So that's something that we're also working on. So we have a lot of different blockchain AI crossover projects that I'm involved in.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And we can see that you're heavily involved in this space. And so we welcome you to this conversation.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Rowan Yarn. Can you do a brief introduction and the projects that you're working on?
Sure, yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Good evening, Michael. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Rowan Yarn, founder of Bricks Exchange. Bricks Exchange is a real estate tokenization and trading company in development. We have a crypto token on the Ethereum network. It is BRX handle. And the objective of having this is to work towards the redevelopment of underserved communities. And so there's a lot of other functionality baked into the project, but the main objective of the model is to allow access to investing in real estate for people who don't have the wherewithal to be an investor and buying up whole properties, and also for individuals that may lack the expertise from the renovation construction standpoint. Say they want to be an investor, but they don't have the skills to go about actually renovating properties. This will be super helpful for people like that. So our objective is to lower the barriers of entry for real estate investing, and I'm happy to share any more that you might wonder about what it is that we do.
Well, and again, thank you for joining us, for being a featured speaker on this panel. And next we have Thomas Ford. Give us an introduction, please.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Ford. I am a U.S. Navy veteran, 21 years served. Okay, graduated Georgia State University. All right, in business. I own fatfi.com, and my drive is to privatize an economy, because of course we realize that we don't own our own money. We don't own the government's money. And I believe that it's clearly time that we actually put forth an effort to have and own and be able to privatize our economy. So I have my currently blockchain and block explorer, Anubis chain, anubischain.com, as well as fatfi.com, which is we are full-fledged exchange and blockchain, and working on Web3 with 21 nodes and 6 different servers, and working to increase our servers so that we can become more community based. But my drive is to bring back Black Wall Street based on the economy, and not based on marketing, but actually bring back a privatized economy for the Black community. There you have it.
All right, thank you. And so this is going to be more of a strategy session. We're going to start off by discussing the digital asset report that came out on Wednesday, and what is the impact of that report on building Black economic sovereignty through digital assets. And so this is going to be really taken into 4 parts. So the first is understanding the digital asset report and what its key findings were, and what the implications for our community. Then we're going to touch on regulatory impacts and challenges, stablecoins, DAOs, token issuance. What does that mean for projects that we've developed or are in development? We're going to then talk more about the platforms that each of us here on the panel have started rolling out, and how the digital assets report speaks to the pathway that we're taking on each of our respective projects. And then we're going to end about what strategies can we work on, what common objectives do we have, so that we can strategically build these systems that are all about supporting the Black community. So let's talk about the key insights. So the digital assets report is a 150-page report. It was commissioned by the president through an executive order, in which he gave the working group 180 days to issue this report. It came out on Wednesday, and more than anything, it specifies that regulatory clarity is coming. The first regulatory act, the Genius Act, was passed last month, regulating stablecoins. And it basically defines a stablecoin as a coin that is 100% backed by the US dollar, and is issued through a financial institution. And so that has some impacts on some of the stable coins that have been developed or in development by some of the people here on this panel. But regulatory clarity is a good thing. It gives us the guardrails by which we need to operate within. The crypto industry for the last 10 years has been flying in the dark, and the SEC has been picking companies off by filing lawsuits and trying to do enforcement um, by suing companies, when all companies have been asking for are what are the rules. There also seems to be a shift toward centralization. So there's definitely an increased emphasis on compliance, KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering, and custodial safeguards. So as we develop our projects, we need to take that into consideration. It's no longer going to be the wild, wild west. And what does that mean for the projects that we're developing? It also gives us, though, the opportunity to operate in compliance, especially as early adopters who align with policy while still advancing community first innovation. And so there is definitely opportunities. And now that we have a framework in which to work in, this is really a call to action for Black crypto builders to come together. And that's why I have assembled this panel. And so let's first talk about the Genius Act and the and how it affects the stable coins. So, so I asked the panel because Thomas, you have a stable coin, the USDA Aquarius. I think you also have a stable coin, and both of those are backed by commodities. One is backed by silver, one is backed by gold. And now that the Genius Act has come out with the clear definitions of what a stable coin is, how does that impact what you guys have rolled out?
Well, I don't feel actually any of this has really changed anything. Both acts that are floating around are literally, I guess you could say, the invisible regulations that already kind of existed, the existent regulations that were already there. So now they're just putting it on paper. Especially the Clarity Act, because the Clarity Act actually bounces off of what Hester Pierce suggested for crypto clarity anyway. That was all based off of her. And the stable coins really kind of outlines what you should do if you're starting a stable coin, if you're going to be launching a stable coin anyway. And so it just kind of like, I guess you say, inks it on paper. But this was the pathway towards launching a stable coin anyway. You know what I mean? So it wasn't very hard for them to really kind of like, I guess you could say, ink it or put it out, because if you look at it, you say, okay, well, this is what you should be doing. You know what I mean? So, but what it does is it establishes the offices to where you can now go to, because before, you couldn't go to a particular office within an government organization. And, whether it's you have to register or answer for something, who do you answer to still was kind of floating. And most of the time that would fall up under the SEC by default, even though a lot of other things are supposed to fall up under the CFTC. So yeah, to me, it doesn't really change anything. I was getting a little bit, but I'm not quite sure this is going to be the, how do you say, the crackdown that people think it's going to be, because that crackdown was already there. Maybe it'll be the clarity, but it won't be the crackdown, you know, because they're going to want to crack down on you. They're going to crack down on you regardless. And they have done it. They actually have cracked down more. I guess you could say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe pre FTX. This is when they were really going hard, of course, when they had whatever, Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler was cracking down way more than they plan on cracking down right now. So, you know, and we all can attest to that. So I don't think there's a reason, I'm just putting this out there. I don't think there's a reason to be afraid, because the fear time has actually kind of passed. Now you got the robber barons really, really digging their hands into this space. So they ain't nothing to be afraid of right now. Now you just got to do the work. You know what I mean? Like before, you needed to be afraid. You don't need to be afraid now. Too many crooks are at the helm right now for you to be afraid. You know, so
Okay.
but I think it's good that it may push people to do some things and stretch themselves. Like, yeah, we are launching a gold stablecoin, but we're also launching a USD backed stablecoin too. And so the question is, now it poses people to say, well, what can we do? What are our best options to doing so? Because aside being a bank, because really they're trying to corner you in some areas to become a bank. You know, you literally have to go through and have enough capital and have enough, have a really tight team that's very transparent, like a bank that really kind of comes up under there. But then there are other ways that you can do it that are well exposed. If you're going through Wyoming, if you're setting up a trust, if you're or if you're dealing with just particular states and all of that. So it forces you to do a little bit more research, you know, which in a case is good. You know what I mean? You may find something that'll ease your mind in doing the research. So, you know, I like it for that reason. But like I said, don't think that this means that clampdown is coming.
So, Thomas, what's your perspective having launched a silver-backed stablecoin?
Well, I disagree with her. I think that many of the current stable coins are definitely going to go out faster. And I'll tell you why. A couple of things. Number one is there's additional regulations that you're going to have to follow. If you're going to become a bank, you got to file a request to become a bank. You got to jump through hoops to actually become a bank. And then you have to be approved, okay, by the institution in order to become a bank. Then plus you got to have a certain amount of liquidity. So yeah, there's a lot of stable coins that are not going to exist once the law actually goes into effect.
Most of those are scams anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I agree, 120%. Right. So, but
you're going to be a scam if you're not going to at least go about it the correct, or try to get into compliance, then yeah, you are going to disappear. But it doesn't mean that, yeah, they're cracking down on the scams. But the people, if you got legitimate projects that you're really trying to put forth the effort and stuff like that, this gives you the pathway to do so. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in like that. I'm just saying it's so many scammers in the game. Sometimes I don't even like to even be referring to them, because they make the legitimate people look like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you can't even mention any of these other people because they weren't doing the right thing.
So, Thomas, any other additional comments about the effect of stablecoins?
yeah, it's again, whether they are scammers or legitimate, because there are going to be additional requirements that you're going to need to pass, all right, in order to become a actual stablecoin. There are, of course, like the registering as a non-bank institution, for which anything that is commodity based will have to register as a non-banking institution. But Stripe, PayPal, Bank of America, Wells Fargo are already registering their own stablecoin, okay, to ensure that they actually are able to tap into the actual stablecoin market. But it's going to 100% be difficult for most stablecoins, whether they be legitimate and or scams, to actually become a banking, just to become a banking or even have a banking partner is going to be like almost like pulling teeth. So the only ideal resolution for that would be to actually base your stablecoin on a commodity, just like just like ours, which is based on silver in our vault, or actual silver, and then gold or whatever other commodity. Then you'll be able to register as a non-bank stablecoin, non-banking stablecoin, because you're no longer trading your stablecoin for fiat, which is the U.S. dollar, and it's all about how they control the U.S. dollar. It's all about control. They want to have the majority of the control of the U.S. dollar, where the U.S. dollar goes, what it's being traded for, how it's being spent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to make it extremely difficult, and they're going to make it very hard for whether you're a legitimate stablecoin or scam. It's going to be hard for just about everybody. And yes, you're going to have to put in some work, but at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that have the final say if you are a stablecoin that is utilizing the U.S. dollar as a resource that's backing your stablecoin. Again, I go back to what I said. Commodities are not going to have that problem, because here's the thing: when you could redeem your commodity for the actual commodity, or redeem it for cash. But so then there is a way to register as a non-banking institution when your stablecoin is backed by a commodity more so than backed by the U.S. dollar. So in other words, like I said before, and I stand by it, that a lot of the stable coins that are only solely sold and purchased utilizing its liquidity based on the U.S. dollar is going to have a very hard time. And that's the reason why I believe that majority of them are going to definitely either they're going to conform to being a commodity-based stable coin, or they're going to just die off altogether.
So I think, go ahead, Aquarius.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to address the non-banking thing. There's a few already. What needs to happen is the model that Wyoming is creating needs to be picked up by more states. More states need to develop their own interstate or statewide jurisdictions for crypto, the whole crypto industry in general, and they can use Wyoming as a boilerplate for that, because Wyoming has a few programs that you could go up under to create your stablecoin, especially like if you have a trust or et cetera. They have and they also have sandboxes for startups to be able to do it, right? So where they'll give you will literally, you'll have like at least a year or two to be able to come into compliance. So there are sandboxes that are baked into here as well. And what needs to happen is you need to go to your state and you need to push for more of these frameworks that Wyoming has already put into place to start going into place in your state. And then also there are some parts of the bill that says that you could potentially go through licensing, like maybe if you're going through an issue in New York, then you go through you get a bit license, and they're formulating frameworks coming under the bit license and other state licenses. So there's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. It's not just you have to become a bank. The top two options is to become a bank, but then there are other options below that don't require you to necessarily become a bank. Maybe you have to build yourself up to becoming, more compliant, but you do have time to do that.
Yeah, and so and this report is full of recommendations to executive federal departments, the Treasury, the SEC, some other departments on how to implement the parts of the Genius Act. It talks about recommendations to Congress to pass certain laws based on certain philosophies. Creating sandboxes is definitely one of them, and so it definitely creates clarity as far as with the current stable coins. It clearly defines that a stable coin by definition is one that is backed by US dollars or equivalents. And those tokens or coins that are backed by commodities no longer are called stable coins, and they fall under a different jurisdiction. Um, Mainly under the was it CTFC, um, the um, um, the organization that's responsible for commodities. And so as we move on, we've talked a little bit about the Genius Act and stable coins. Uh, let's talk about DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. And DAOs are at the forefront of decentralized governance. It's an organization where there's no leader. Everything is done by consensus. And one of the slippery legal slopes is there's no one accountable. And so at the federal level, DAOs um, aren't clearly recognized as a legal entity. There are some states, such as Wyoming, that has DAO-like structures that are legal entities. But Wyoming tends to be at the forefront of a lot of business entities, but they're not necessarily recognized by other states or by the federal government. So, oh, you know what? I thought I was sharing my screen. Sorry, I wasn't. So this is the slide talking about DAOs, and so I'd like to ask my panel, what is your opinions on DAOs, and how should we be using them, if we should be using them at this time? And Rowan, let's get you involved in the conversation.
Yeah, that sounds good. I just want to go back to the last segment just real quick because I didn't get a chance to chime in about the stable coins. And I was
Okay.
going to actually say something similar to you, is like there was some clarity given about what a stable coin represents. So it's not, commodities any longer. And it may be the case that in the culture or in the community or the industry at large, they might kind of like casually still refer to these things as stable coins. But for the purpose of the legal framework, that's not the case any longer. And I was going to say that I don't believe we're going to see fewer stable coins emerge. I think that there's really going to be more. In fact, the way that they've laid it out is, the corporations have more incentive to create their own stable coins because they are able to manage their liquidity in a more effective way. They can lower um, their operational costs significantly. Currently, you've got the PayPals, the uh, Amazons, Apple Pay. There's so many organizations that all currently use the old uh, system of making payments. If I want to buy something online, all these cost sort of like you've got Visa and MasterCard, and everyone knows that you've got to pay the 3% um, hostage fee basically for whatever your product is in order to do your transaction. And so from what I've read and heard and seen is that these corporations are now going to begin creating their stable coins, not because they want to be the masters of the universe in the crypto world, but because they can use it to lower their operational costs. The key input being that, for every, dollar they in services or products they sell, they gotta, pay out 3% to a Visa or a MasterCard and so forth. And so by creating these stable coins and creating their own treasury centered around the stablecoin, it will allow them to bypass American Express, Visa, MasterCard, and so forth. So that is the thing that I would be thinking about going forward. The idea is not to be the master of the universe. No one, as far as a stable coin, the idea is like, what's the point of having a stable coin? From their perspective, and I would say even from my perspectives, what can you do to lower your transaction costs that will make you more competitive in the marketplace? So that's the one thing that I would like to just sort of chime in and say about stable coins. And then you would ask the question about DAOs. I like DAOs. I don't think that every DAO is helpful. I think that when a DAO is being utilized for the purpose of a community, it's super helpful. So, if you have a DAO, like, I'm not an expert on DAOs, but I know that, the idea of a autonomous decentralized organization sounds great if it's being used for good. You know what I mean? But there are ways of circumventing laws, ways of getting around, um, like legal constraints by creating these autonomous organizations that will allow people to, perpetrate frauds and that type of thing. So I think that it's important to be clear about like what does the DAO offer. So like, all DAOs aren't made the same, and I'm not suggesting that like there's any particular DAO out there that I have a problem with, except that I remember in the early days of crypto, there was very little concern for the consumer in terms of the safety of their assets. You would routinely find that people would send large uh, amounts of crypto to like a black hole, get one digit wrong and your stuff is gone, or send it to the wrong person. And I just hated the way that like the programmers was like, well, you know, better luck next time. Or, they just did not seem to have any real sense of empathy for people who are still learning how all this works. And I always thought that that was counterproductive, because if the whole point is to drive mass adoption of this technology, then I would think that having a customer first mentality where you're focused sort of obsessively on making their assets safe and showing them how to safely send money, and that type of thing. But I did not find that people were concerned about consumers. So from that standpoint, I think that DAOs should be created in a way that they aren't entirely run, by automation. I think there has to be some human input to account for mistakes, to allow people to be made whole in the event of a problem and that type of thing. So that's my view of DAOs, but I'm looking forward to hearing what other people have to say about it.
All right. Thank you. Aquarius, what's your take about DAOs, and should we be using them?
I totally agree with him when he talked about DAOs and being careful in terms of their use and their effectiveness, because I do believe that their use and effectiveness is community based more than anything else. It's definitely, people shouldn't be under the impression that it's some type of investment club or anything like that. You know what I mean? Because that's when you run into a lot of difficulties. Because I've been setting up DAOs, but then when you attach a DAO to, let's say, to a property, right? Then there still has to be a major part of just humans that actually manage the property, actually manage all of the offline stuff in regards to it. And these initial people who set up the DAO are likely the ones that are coming in with the initial investment towards something, you know what I mean? So, then the percentage of what the governance is going to be has to be decided at the very beginning before the other members come in. So you may set up a whole bunch of things that may be unfair to other people down the line because these things have to be initially set up, you know, so it becomes sticky in those cases. But if you're setting up something that's for community benefit, you know what I mean? So like you set up a neighborhood DAO that's going to beautify the neighborhood, you know. So these people who come into the DAO and whether they're getting tokens for voting or whatever, like a big old HOA or whatever, and you get to vote on different initiatives that would happen in the community, and then those things can be executed by the funds that are collected by the DAO that's coming into the DAO. The risk always comes in with it being totally decentralized and anonymous, is that other people can come in and just totally disrupt what you have set up. You know, which should be the biggest, of course, the biggest fear is like, if we set up something totally autonomous and we just let people come in and whatever, you know, we actually run into this problem with GWAP. You know, we have a blockchain, we've had it out. And my concern was we were going to, it was suggested that we attach the DAO to our GitHub, right? But I've already dealt with people who tried to come in and hack the GitHub, you know. So that would mean that people would come in to the DAO with malefic purposes of destroying the code or whatever the case may be, and they may acquire enough votes or tokens to do so. So it runs to the age-old situation I actually ran into with GWAP in general being decentralized, which is why our layer 2 is we have a proof of authority. So we have validators, and those validators are not anonymous. And they have to be chosen, you know, allowed, because we have a specific case with our people that here we are, we have low funds, and you know, we could potentially have someone that come to sabotage what little things that we do. So we have to protect ourselves from sabotage at all costs, which and always, again, as I said in like the other thing, that transparency is actually more important to Black people than anonymity, because we've been anonymous. You know what I mean? So, and we're fighting to be seen. We're fighting to be transparent. We're fighting to be open. So the use case for all of these things are much stronger for us than it is for anybody else. So just for that purpose. But when it comes to DAOs, yes, you have to understand that it's not going to be, you still have to have some business sense of when you are going to initially set up things, because you have to think about down the line where this is going to go. If you're just doing a simple DAO to come together to make a purchase,
Uh-oh, did you freeze? Aquarius, are you frozen? Um, can anybody else hear me? Can you hear her?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear Aquarius?
No, I can't hear.
Ah, okay. So we'll come back
She's
to,
on mute.
You
Oh,
lost
she's
her
off now.
signal, I think.
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so Thomas, tell us what your opinion is about the Black community using DAOs.
Now, I'm always a proponent for the community, but of course, I believe in structure. So just like with anything else, I think before you start just picking and choosing just anybody, it should be some type of structure, some type of application, something that's set up that helps you to identify who's going to be good for you and who's not going to be so good for you. That way you can, and it should be more community based, where the community actually picks and chooses, all right, these people who represent the actual community within the DAO, because it shouldn't just be solely token. You know, if a person owns so many tokens that they become, you know, prominent member or they have a say, it should be just like a board of directors. A board of directors, they have to put in work in order to be, and it shouldn't be anonymous anyway. I think that if you're speaking on behalf of a crypto or blockchain, whatever the case may be, or project, all right, that you should be recognized. these people should be not anonymous. I just I don't agree with being anonymous. I believe that uh, I believe people should know who these people are, and you know, that way when rules, regulations, and things are put in place that governs a project or the projects, that people understand who these people are and what qualifies them to actually be the center of attention when it comes down to these crypto projects. But you know, with that being said, I think there's something I wanted to touch on. Anytime the government gets involved in anything, it's not about protecting the people as it is about carrying over control, and how they can control it by and letting people know, or getting people to think that they're utilizing this control to protect the people. Because I mean, how many things have they claimed that is supposed to be protecting the people and actually not, and you know, and just hindered the people's growth, and their wealth and their ability to grow, more so than protect them. I mean, I can name many laws that have been enacted that doesn't protect American citizens, and only hinders their ability to grow. But with that being said, I mean, the best thing I could say about all of this is that, just like I said with AI, when people didn't believe me when I said AI was going to be pretty big, and they were saying, "Oh, well, AI is not going to be pretty big," and then here we are, AI is pretty big, you know. So I'll let time tell. Time will be the biggest teacher. So, and there's nothing else I could say. So,
Yeah. So my experience with DAOs started a few years ago. I was part of the Black History DAO, and the concept of a DAO was intriguing, but I also have, you know, decades of experience of being a Black activist on the front lines, um, and interacting with our people to try to get things done. And through my experience, 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. And so this idea of consensus, though it sounds great in theory, I have not seen it be effective on a grand scale. So the Black History DAO, it took us 3 weeks to come to a consensus on the name of the DAO. And at that time, there was, and there still isn't, a lot of legal clarity around the legal entities of DAOs. And so I recommended at that time that we do a 501c3 organization called the Black History Foundation, which we did. We still have the Black History DAO, but they work in tandem, right? And so this is where the strategic part comes into play, right? We have to start playing chess, and you know, each of the panelists here have their respective platforms that they're building, and now with the Genius Act and with this digital asset report and the forthcoming Clarity Act, the guardrails are going to come up on crypto. It's not going to be the wild, wild west like it was. And that can be actually good. Um, and, and so the next topic I want to talk about is token issuance and a new era of compliance. So some of us may be familiar with ICOs, initial coin offerings, where companies would offer coins, the price would run up on the coins, and then the early founders would sell off their bulk of their coins that they got for free or that they got for hardly nothing. And then the ones who were the most recent purchasers of the coins were left holding the bag. And so the digital asset report puts under scrutiny the issuance of tokens. So this impacts everything from utility tokens to NFTs. And so we got to start looking at other strategies such as SAFT, SAFT, simple agreement for future tokens. This is similar to a SAFE, which is a simple agreement for future equity, but this is for future tokens, to where in exchange for capital, you're saying that the investor will receive a certain amount of tokens in the future, so they can't immediately go and sell the tokens once the tokens are offered on the open market. Um, and so I'd like to talk about what is the panel's impression, feelings, and your going forward when it comes to issuing tokens. And I'll start first with Ron.
Yeah, so it's a good thing. I like it. I created a platform, Bricks Exchange, which allows us to do this very thing. The tokenized piece of it anyway. But, you do need legal assistance. I'm not an attorney. So, in terms of, creating a, PPM or whatever, you've got to, know what it is that you're looking to strive for long term. And so, um, you know, I'll just be very transparent in saying that, my idea started similarly probably when Aquarius started back in, 2016. I'd started workshopping this idea. But what I discovered is that, like, when I would pitch investors, they really didn't understand what I was talking about, Um, going back to very early 2016, 2017. Hey, I want to tokenize real estate. You should invest in this. And so, I found it very difficult to really get things off the ground that way. And what I've discovered really is that, you know, if you don't have the network, then you're not going to be able to raise in that fashion. You can have all of the tools available to you, but if you don't have the materials around you that make those tools useful, then that's, a problem. I think it's important first and foremost to work on your network, because your network is really going to dictate the manner in which the money comes to you. Whether you use a SAFE or SAF, or you get some venture funding or what have you, it really all comes down to, frankly, what's realistic. And so, any tool is going to be good if you're able to use it for the purpose that you're intending to use it. And I mean, don't mean to be too vague about that, but I just found that, like, building, bootstrapping has been the most effective thing for me, and not worrying about, um, you know, uh, bringing investors in using a SAF or a SAFE. I think that, just straight up selling your crypto on exchanges, there's countless places that you can go to. A lot of them, frankly, are wolves. I'm going to be honest with you. Um, but that's the state of the market. And if you've dealt with people overseas, I spent a little time in Dubai. I met a lot of international players that are working in the space. They all use sort of a different, method. That Dubai has created a similar pathway for raising capital, um, and it doesn't involve any of those things. So I don't know that that tool is going to be the most useful method of raising capital going forward, but that's just my own personal observation. I'd love to hear what other people think about it.
Aquarius, I'm glad to have you back. And so, what's your opinion or take when it comes to token issuance, raising funds?
Well, this is the thing. You gotta know from the very beginning what pathway you're taking. If you're going towards a decentralized pathway, then you know you shouldn't be going, like you said, towards investment, any safe south, whatever kind of investment is not a venture, not even venture. You shouldn't be going in that direction. Because that kind of sucks your decentralized beginning slowly, kills that project very, very slowly. Yes, if you're going down the path of decentralization, it's going to be a slow path. Bitcoin was a slow path. However, there are ways that, again, I've seen many projects pop up and die. And these are projects that typically we're going after some sort of venture capital or whatever to go into their project versus to go into maybe technology or subsidiary projects or whatever, but to actually go into the project. And to me, that just totally defeats the purpose of the project. You know what I mean? As something that's going to be ultimately become a currency in within the community, you're kind of like tainting it, with that. Um, I had difficulties earlier on. Yeah, I actually loved Hester Pierce. I've been on panels, I've talked to her with Hester Pierce, and she originally had, and actually that's being adopted into the Clarity Act, where she was stating that a project should have a certain amount of years. I think she was saying 3 years to adequately decentralize. Because of course, when you first start, you're starting centralized. There's no way you can get around it until you actually build a community. And like you said, a community is the most important driver in this, because that's how all of the cryptos earlier on started. They started with communities. And it was those communities that built up these certain projects and gave the value. So the funny thing is, within our community, that's the biggest problem is getting the community together, right? So this like solves two problems. It solves our financial problem when we start to realize how much power we have and social capital we have as a community, and we actually have a tool to display that and to track that with data and numbers, and it solves our financial problems as well. So ultimately, that's why people like me, and I'm even sure of some of the other panelists, are here still in this game, because we realize how important the two come together, and that's just a whole other aspect. Now, if you are looking to get into you're actually trying to raise capital, and this is the hurting part as well, because this is the part that drove me into GWAP in the first place. My first startup, I had a startup called Safe to Me, and we had invented the world's first peer-to-peer verification platform, verify someone's safe to do anything with, business, whatever, in less than 5 minutes. And we were partnering with LexisNexis and all these other people. But of course, our problem, and it was headed by myself and my co-founder that I brought in, 2 Black women, we could not raise money, at least not adequate money, to support us and to get us to scale. So I eventually left, and I was looking at all of these crypto projects popping up. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues, Christine McFarlane, she started Patientory during that time. I think she raised like $5 million when she came out. And this is through the ICO when she launched Patientory. So I was like, wow, they're actually raising the capital that they need to be able to put their projects forward. That's great. We need to be able to create the money, create these things to be able to put our tech forward. And that was a big driver for me with GWAP in the beginning. But when I got dead smack into the middle of it, ICOs, they came down like after what's it called? EOS raised the most money ever and then disappeared a couple of years later with billions of dollars. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden it's a bad thing to have an ICO and to raise money. So all of they brought that hammer down, right? So I initially came in prepared to do an ICO, was going to do an ICO, got to maybe $10,000, and this actually came from the community itself, shut the whole thing down. So I raised $10,000. Somebody actually reached out to me the other day and said, I heard you raised a lot of money and I want to know how you did it. my pockets, bootstrapping, like the gentleman said. Every little bit of money I made for the past, I don't know how many years, that's how I do it, you know, but yes, being able to freely raise money within the community, which is why I was working on another pathway. I've been to the Department of Treasury. I spoke with the Treasury Council. What I really wanted to do was to get a sandbox for Black people. We deserve a sandbox. This is our reparations. Our reparations is allow us to have a financial sandbox like the Native Americans have with casinos and et cetera, but allow us to have a financial sandbox within the blockchain community and creating our own projects and leave us the hell alone. This is what my course of action was going to be in terms of reparations, et cetera. And these are the talks that I was having. Yes, I was at the Department of Treasury talking to the Treasury Council. I'm a member, one of the founding members of Women in Color and Blockchain. We were working on policy. And I'm trying to slip this in the door. I'm like, look, this is what you could do for us. This is what we need. If we're going to get a sandbox for any project to get 3 years to be able to adequately decentralize and start a project, what kind of sandbox can we get for Black people to be able to get our projects, because we are already 10 years behind, $10 billion behind, and all of that. And every time you come up with a new legislation, that's only going to push us back even further. So, you know, that's just a little bit. That's my take on the fundraising bit.
Yeah, I really appreciate. I'm sorry, Michael. You go ahead. I was going to jump in here, but go ahead.
Well, so this actually leads me to the next section, which is the platforms and the solutions that we're each trying. And so, Aquarius, you gave us an example of what your experience has been. The whole reason why I created the Closed Private Investment Network was to create an environment where we as Black people could come together, pool our money together legally under the current SEC rules, and looking at those areas such as investment clubs, where the SEC specifically says that investment clubs are excluded from being supervised by the SEC if they meet certain qualifications. And so my goal has been to create the infrastructure for the community to use to come together to learn about finances, to learn about technology, to increase their risk tolerance, and to give them a platform on which to pool their money together in private placement opportunities, which is how rich white folks have been starting businesses and getting money from their friends just through the private placement exemption. Allows them to raise an unlimited amount of money from an unlimited number of people as long as they have a pre-existing substantive relationship with them and they're accredited or sophisticated investors. And so that's what the Closed Private Investment Network is. It's about community, education, and investments. And we've also created the BNIC Digital Reserve, which is a private Bitcoin treasury. Bitcoin has been the fastest appreciating asset for the last 10 years. It's projected to continue to be the fastest appreciating asset for the next 10 to 20 years. And so MicroStrategy, which is a publicly traded company now called Strategy, just raised over $1 billion through preferred shares just to buy Bitcoin. And we've seen the price of Bitcoin jump from $70,000 about 6 months ago to around 120, and it's projected to reach $1 million within the next 3 to 5 years. And there's lots of reasons why Bitcoin is projected to reach that amount. Don't have the time to go into detail here, but we are putting together the infrastructure for the Black community to access digital assets, and to be part of this digital economy. And so, Rowan, and let's talk about the platform that you've created, and how it helps Black folks.
Thank you. Yeah, this is the part that really excites me, guys, because um, I'll just share with you briefly my background, if you don't mind. I've been a real estate investor and a real estate professional for nearly 25 years now. I worked in Atlanta at the Land Bank Authority, where I was the community coordinator around the time of the '08 housing crisis. So I was very involved in the city's effort to claw back properties that were boarded up and blighted communities to create a more healthy and vibrant type of economy there in Atlanta. There were neighborhoods that had been boarded up for decades, and the city could never really get their head around it despite their best efforts. But when I left that role, and as I had mentioned, I started this project in 2016, but I actually learned about Bitcoin in 14. And then I was mulling over like how I might use this technology in the real estate space. But I think it's important to say this as a part of my remarks is that Bitcoin was a prototype, and it's wonderful that people have grafted to it, but you have to understand that like at 100,000 K, like the most you could hope in the next 10 years is for it to maybe 10x, maybe let's say it does 20x. Like there's safer, easier ways to 10x your money than putting it into like it's I know people disagree with me. I think Bitcoin's too late to invest in if your goal was to make a stupid amount of money. Because in order for me to become a millionaire with Bitcoin right now, I'd have to put $100,000 of my money. Okay. So I have to pony up $100,000 cash. You have to understand strategy is a Ponzi scheme. Okay. So you have Bitcoin exposure with MicroStrategy or strategy, but you have more exposure to the risk because they borrow against that money. They're paying dividends from new investors. If you put your money in strategy today, the money that you gave them is not going to go buy more Bitcoin. It's going to pay off the early investors to strategy. So I would avoid that like it was an infection. You know what I'm saying? But what I will tell you is that going back to what Aquarius was saying is like, community is key here. And what we have here is, as a collective community, a lot of money that's not being positioned in the right way. Never mind real estate. We can come back to real estate in a second. But if we organize and take those dollars and it's important to have infrastructure. Okay, like I'm creating token infrastructure as well for the financial sector, and as it relates to real estate. I can talk to you for hours about all the tokens, the ecosystem that I'm creating. But I think the most important relevant thing here is that we need to, in our discussion, figure out how we can coordinate, how we can work in a collaborative way so that each of our respective projects, we can tap into the energy that the other person's doing that we can use to leverage ourselves. So we create leverage. I work with you. You've got something special that you're working on. So do I. How can we leverage each other's current work to bring more people in? As I go back to my earlier remarks, it's always been about mass adoption. And yes, Octavius, they're ahead of us, and that's fine. But what they don't understand is our community. And if we ever manage to get ourselves organized, then we can take a CPIN and we can take your project and my project and use it in a way that brings more people in. It's about adoption and not steering them towards Bitcoin. Please, please, brother, do not steer these people towards Bitcoin. They will
But
be feeding someone else's pockets.
I
We
have to so agree. I'm
we have
so
to, we have to, we
agree.
have to, we have to start our own thing ground level. BRX right now,
yeah,
so just to be clear about it, like I created a token, BRX, stands for Bit Real Estate Exchange. The idea was to use it to heal our Black community by looking at other examples. I don't know who here remembers Cardano and ADA, but what I found was very kind of funny is that Charles Hodgkinson, he started ADA and he used the Japanese investors to launch his project. And then later, as an afterthought, claimed, "Well, I'm going to use this platform to help the people of Africa. They need a platform that they can use to buy and sell services, and ADA, is going to be used, and Cardano is going to be the thing." And I just thought to myself, well, sir, if you were really interested in helping the Black community, you would have involved them in the early stage of your project. You would have given them the access to the sub-cent value. You understand? But he didn't. He gave that money, those investment opportunities to the Japanese investors, and then later claimed, "Oh, well, this is all for the Black community. Fuck you." Excuse my language. Pardon my French. I'm going to be very clear about this, guys. If we it doesn't have to be bricks. It can be bricks. I don't care. But it should be a project that is just getting started. What I'm doing with bricks is I'm giving it away to HBCUs. I'm giving it away to nonprofit organizations. I'm going to put it in the hands of the people that will benefit from its appreciation. I got 110 million tokens. And my plan is to, I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember Brewster's Millions or Brewster's Millions, remember that? Where, Richard Pryor he's got to, in order for him to get like all his inheritance, he's got to give a bunch of money away. Like that's kind of the idea here, because there's two ways to build value. Make people want it by selling it and making them get FOMO, or giving it away and spreading it around as much as possible and then creating FOMO that way. So what I intend to do with BRX is to spend the next year or two as a part of my roadmap, giving it to local nonprofits, focusing on affordable housing organizations, focusing on CDFIs. And then once it's been properly dispersed, then using the investment piece, the real estate tokenization investments, as the means for those people to then create that liquidity event where they um, sell off their shares. By then they might be worth, just think about it. If I give you something for nothing and then in a year or two, it's worth 10 cents. Well, your basis is zero, but let's just assume you paid a penny for it. You know what I mean? Now you've 10x. Now it's easy to 10x at 10 cents if you buy it for a penny. But if you have to buy $100,000 worth of something and wait for it to become $1 million, then just
so
think about that.
Hey,
You know
let
what I
me
mean?
add, can I add something
yeah,
on that? Can I add something on that?
Please do. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to take up too much of you guys'
Oh,
time,
no,
but I
no,
want
no, 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 no. But I totally agree with everything you're saying. And I could tell like you've been there because I've been there and you're talking the same road that I get it. Like, but see, first of all, I wanted to just address one big problem with us, right? And even just in the crypto blockchain world, it's not lack of funds, it's lack of infrastructure, right? So, because they have the rails, they own the rails. Like, how do you get it? How do you get it easy? How do you move it? The exchanges, etc. We've been on an exchange for 4 years that we got delisted from low volume. We didn't have low volume before, but we got low volume now. So we got delisted. So now I have to raise another $150,000 to get us on 3 other exchanges. But look at the number, $150,000 for something that's already been out there, people know about from here to New York. they know about guap. I've had people and organizations come to me and say that we brought more Black people onto just the world of crypto than any other project. They're like, I had one guy that got in early and he used guap to build his whole portfolio off, right? And he was able to accumulate about 50 grand of all other stuff with the guap that he had, right? And he'll testify all the time to these stories. Like, these are stories. Like, we're decentralized, so I don't have any kind of way to just create guap and have it, right? So I was giving away guap for years to the point where I had no guap left. You know what I had to do? I had to go to one of the first early masternode holders, which are like miners, and she's not nothing, but she is a customer service agent at Xfinity, right? And she purchased 10 master nodes in the beginning, because that's how we were able to raise a little bit of money, is build master nodes and support them and all this other stuff. So she purchased 10 master nodes. I went back to her and I bought 50,000 USD worth of guap from her. I got some money together and gave her 50. So she made back the USD and more, right? So this was able to give me the reality of what our value is. Because here I am, the founder, spending my little bit of money that came in, that whatever, to re-up on my guap just so I could give it away again. You know what I mean? Just so I have coins to give away. And I was able to do that. But there are stories like that within the project that are like so phenomenal. And those are the driving stories for me to keep coming. But beyond that, our only problem, and it's small, I would have to say right now, I don't have to raise a lot of money, but $150,000 right now is a lot of money to me. But once we get back on the exchanges, with 150,000 on 3 exchanges, market makers, etc., the price resets. So all of these thousands of people who are holding on to guap, right? And a price reset ain't got nothing to do with me. It's just the fact that we're now brand new again because we're not on any exchange. Their guap is now worth, I mean, for the point that it went from 0 to 20 cent to 25 cent is tremendous. All on its own on the exchanges. But even with this reset, they're now holding on to coins that when we first came off the exchange had went down to a penny, which is still something because it's not 0, and it's not below, but it went to a penny. But when it hits the exchanges again, and this has no manipulation, nothing to do with anything, the coins that they're going to be holding on to are going to 10x, 20x. That's crazy, right? Like that's really crazy. I mean, but a lot of people, they don't get it. They're on the Bitcoin train and they're on to this train and they're thinking this and they're thinking that. But these cycles have happened with other cryptos and they don't understand it. That cycle happened with Dogecoin, which people were sitting on millions of coins.
So we are running out of time. We're actually over 15 minutes over. And so I do want to start wrapping this up. And we've already jumped into the slide of strategies, right? We've talked about education and advocacy. A big one is infrastructure development, investing in and building out robust digital asset platforms and secure decentralized systems tailored for our needs. And we've heard from several of those platforms today, and the strategic partnerships. And I hope that this is the beginning of developing those strategic partnerships.
Yes, and I definitely want to keep in contact with you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I would love to include your project in the browser that we're launching as another resource, because what we've done is we've divided up different areas of life, and we want people to step up in those areas of life and provide some type of leadership or whatever, even with their projects. So real estate would be an awesome area of life, that needs you know, your type of knowledge and even your projects. I would love to include it in the EB project and put it in the browser.
Let's definitely talk for sure. And I would just like to have you consider the importance of, is it important to be decentralized? I agree with some of the things that you had said earlier about, you know,
No, we're not
sandbox.
even, we're never going to be fully decentralized. That's what I was saying.
I don't
But
think it's necessary. I don't think that that's the right answer also for us. We
no,
need to.
I totally agree with you. But this is the thing. None of these projects are decentralized. Bitcoin is not decentralized. That's the fact of it. So we're just using wording here,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So I'm going by not yours, but I'm going by the government's
Industry,
wording.
what the
And what
industry
you're
says.
saying that we need to be, we're as close as Bitcoin is. That's it. So if you consider Bitcoin to be decentralized, WAP is decentralized. But
Mhm.
what we know that we do have to have certain things that we can advocate and fight for in the process to say that we cannot be just open and willy-nilly to the world because we're a threat to the world as we know it. So yeah, we know that, but I can play that game.
You
Again,
can't
I'm in
have people
politics.
come in and change it, like you said. I mean, like they can come in and with enough nodes take things over or whatever. And I just think that we need to
What that's why with our layer 2, we adopted POA, proof of authority, because they cannot do that. You cannot
And
come
that's
in with any nodes or anything.
and that is the importance of setting up the infrastructure, correct? So
Yes.
to close this out, this strategy session discussion has been brought to you by the Closed Private Investment Network. I invite all of you that aren't members to apply to join. The link is in the chat. Also, encourage everyone to participate in policy discussions. There are a lot of Black organizations that are having discussions regarding digital assets. So I encourage you to get involved and to attend as many discussions as possible and invest in our collective future. So whether it's investing through the Closed Private Investment Network that presents investment opportunities, or whether it's investing directly in any of the platforms that have been presented here, we need to recycle the Black dollar. We need to come together as a community, and we need to take hold of our future when it comes to digital assets. I want to thank each of the panelists for taking time out of your busy Sunday to join us. And I'd like to thank the audience for coming. I hope that you got a lot out of it, and put your information in the chat. We're here every Sunday, 5 p.m. on the West Coast, 8 p.m. on the East Coast. It's called Let's Talk About It. And each week we have a different discussion topic, talking about a topic that impacts Black people financially. With that, because we are over time, I want to say thank you, and everybody have a blessed night.
Thank
See ya.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.